Let's take a look at the questions on homework number 29. This has to do with our unit on transformations. The first one asks you to write the math rule for the following translation. Remember, a translation is a slide. You can slide left or right, that's along the x-axis, or you can slide up or down, that's along the y-axis. So our first point F was located at 4, 3, and our second point F prime is located at -6, 5. So if you want, you could sketch yourself a little graph here of 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. There's your original point, and then your transformed point, or your translated point, -1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and +1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we want to know how it moved from red to blue. And so it looks like we went to the left, and then it looks like we went up. So this one is to the left, and this number went up. So since this number went up 2, we would use a positive sign. And since this number went left, and it looks like it went 4 and 6, it went left 10 spaces, we're going to use a negative sign. So typically, when you write a math rule, you typically write that the x value is changing by -10, and the y value is changing by up 2. You could write it in English, left 10, up 2. Or you can write it using this translation notation, which is T for translation, and that all the x values should be subtracted by 10, and all of the y values should be added by 2. That's the math rule, but the English rule of left 10 and up 2 is also good. All right, the next question asks for you to reflect over the x-axis. When you reflect over the x-axis, you change the y coordinate. Change the y number. So if I look at my coordinate, I have 7, -5. My new coordinate will be called A prime, and the x will stay, but the y will change signs to +5. The next one is a translation, and if my original coordinate is B, that means my next coordinate will be B prime. Remember, 2 units up affects the y coordinate. That's this number. So 2 units up would be adding 2 to the y coordinate, and 3 units left would be subtracting 3 from the x coordinate. So be careful that you do the math to the right numbers. So our new value here would be -2 minus 3, which is -5, and 3 plus 2, which is +5. The next question asks us to rotate 90 degrees clockwise. When you rotate 90 degrees clockwise, you go in that direction. And when you rotate 90 degrees clockwise, that means your x and y axes change, right? So your x coordinate and y coordinate will swap places, but since we're going clockwise, that means we change the sign of the second number. So we take our original point, 4 and -7, and we swap their places first, and then we change the sign of the second number. So our final answer here will be C prime, -7, -4. The last one is a dilation after a factor of 1/3. So our new point will be called D prime. And when we have a dilation factor, that means we multiply by that value. So -9 times 1/3 is going to be -3, and 6 times 1/3 is going to be 2. Let's take a look at the second box. Finding volume. So you may need to look up on your reference sheet, in your notebook, the volume formula for a cone. 1/3 pi r squared h. So now all I need to do is erase and replace each of these values with their correct number. Now be careful. The radius is halfway across a circle, not all the way across the circle. So we are told that the whole distance is 8. So half of that would be the radius. The height is 9. So you can write your answers two ways. One is in terms of pi, where you compute the math for this, and that. So 1/3 times 4 squared times 9 would be, let's get my calculator here, turn it on, use my fraction button, one-third times parentheses 4 squared times parentheses 9. Looks like I'm going to get 48, but I still haven't used my pi sign. So it's 48 pi if they ask you to write it in terms of pi. And then if they ask you to round to the nearest tenth, which I didn't indicate here, but you should round to the nearest tenth, 48 times the pi symbol. Sometimes they'll ask you to use 3.14 instead of pi, so I'm going to do that as well. 48 times 3.14, and you'll see that it's slightly different, and the rounding will be different. So if it says use 3.14, the answer would be 150.7. But if they said use pi, the answer would be 150.8. All right, so you have to be very careful that you're reading the directions. My directions didn't state here, but I'm going to say round to nearest tenth, and I didn't state to use 3.14, so that means I'm going to use pi. So we're going to say 150.8 feet cubed. Okay, the next one here is a cylinder. And the volume of a cylinder is pi r squared h. Again, erase and replace the correct values. Remember, this is a diameter, so the radius is 3.5. And the height is 3. So I'm going to type all that in my calculator now. I'm going to round to nearest tenth. So I'm going to type pi times 3.5 squared times 3. And it looks like I'm going to get 115.5 centimeters cubed. Next section. Which ordered pair prevents the following set from being a function? So to be a function means no repeating x values, don't forget the second half, with different y values. So x, 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 oh, there's a repeat, x, x. So this is a problem. These two are a problem. This is not a problem. This is not a problem. But this one is. You can't repeat. So if I had just taken this out, then it would be a function. So this is the one that's preventing it from being a function, the repeater. Okay, now we're going to find a rate of change for the next 3 questions. This is the formula you should be using. You should know that this is the first point, and that this is the second point. And that they always start with a giant subtraction fraction, and then place your numbers in the right order and in the correct positions. So in this case, we're going to get 0 over 2, also known as 0. My next giant subtraction fraction, y minus y over x minus x. Be careful here, I have a lot of negatives in a row. Use your calculator if you need assistance. Negative 2 minus negative 4 is going to be 2. And the last one here, y minus y over x minus x is going to be negative 3 over 1, which is negative 3. Turn the paper over. When you divide like bases, you keep the base the same and you subtract the powers. So that gives us 3 to the 10th. So I pick up my calculator, I perform 3 to the 10th. Number 12, I need to distribute. So 2/3 times 3x is 2x, and 2/3 times minus 9 is minus 6. And then combine like terms on this side. 2.5 plus 0.5 is 3x. And now I'm going to use an inverse operation here. I like to get rid of my x's first, so that if my x disappears, I know right away. And looks like my final answer is 3. Over here, I'm also going to distribute. Ooh, I see something already. See how my x's are a perfect match? See how my constants and their signs are a perfect match? Those are twins. You get infinite solutions. If you did not know that or you weren't paying attention, you still could have done some more math here, and you would have noticed that you got a double cross out, right? Anytime a double cross out happens, you will either have matching answers or non-matching answers. So if they are matching, it's infinite solutions. Any more on this page? Nope. Last box. Which equation represents the line shown in the graph to the right? Well, if you haven't drawn them already, you always need to find perfect corner points on your graph. And let's do some common sense. Is this line going up or down? It's going up. So anything with a negative coefficient would be wrong. This line is increasing, so these are wrong. Now we have to decide if it's going up 1 over 2, that would be this one, or up 2 over 1. Up 2 over 1, that would be this one. So because it's going up 2 over 1, up 2 over 1, and it's passing through the origin at +0, the graph would be D. All right, in order to be a linear function, you cannot break any of the variable rules. No variables with powers, boop. No variables timesing each other, no variables in the denominator, boop. And no variables with special symbols. So that means this one passes. Now I know sometimes students say, oh, but that has a power. But that doesn't matter. It's the variable that can't have a power. The numbers can.